Is Hamas willing to go for a deal at this point after Israel left the negotiations today after 3 weeks? Are they willing to go for a hostage deal?
Yes, I was just told that Hamas is prepared to either go with a partial deal or a comprehensive deal. But I honestly, this is the first time in several weeks that I'm more hopeful that we are about to resume negotiations. When those negotiations will resume, I do not know. But today I'm receiving signs that there is an interest in the resumption of those negotiations.
Welcome to the Kraus Report. Today I'm hosting Dr. Bishara Bahbah. He is the unofficial mediator in the negotiation talks for a ceasefire-hostage deal. He does what Steve Witkoff, President Trump's special envoy, tells him to do, which means that he is sort of the back channel of the US to talk with Hamas. Bahbah is working on behalf of Steve Witkoff, President Trump's special envoy, and he was the one who managed with Witkoff to get a deal done that released American-Israeli hostage Edan Alexander. This is the very first time that he talks since the release of Idan Alexander. Bahbah tells me about the current negotiation situation. He just came back from Qatar, Doha, where he spent the past few months while traveling from time to time to Egypt as well. He takes me to behind the scenes of the release of Idan Alexander, reveals that Soha Arafat was the first one to contact him, and also explains what happened almost 3 weeks ago in Qatar, in Doha, when the negotiations sort of collapsed. In the middle of our conversation, Bahbah gets a phone call. Our interview is being interrupted, and it was a phone call from Hamas. Here's the full interview as seen on Channel 13 News. Dr. Bishara Bahbah, the unofficial mediator to the negotiations for a ceasefire hostage talk. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
First of all, tell me about your thought in the past few days. As we know, the negotiations are sort of stopped. There are some negotiators are trying to make it work again. Tell me a little bit about your point of view.
First of all, let me clarify my position. I'm not a member of the U.S. mediation team, if there is such a thing. It's usually Mr. Steve Witkoff. And I don't work for the U.S. government. I do this on my own time, my own expense. So I just wanted to make sure I am at the service of, I've been available to Mr. Witkoff in times when he needed me. And of course, you all know the work that was done with regard to the release of Edan Alexander. That was Mr. Witkoff and I working together on that. And that was a tremendous success from our perspective. And we felt that it would be, Mr. Witkoff told me that it would be a game changer. So, and I still believe that it is a game-changing event that has allowed negotiations to proceed indirectly between the United States and Hamas, and also allowed more room for the other mediators, particularly Qatar and Egypt, to play a more significant role. Now, as far as where we are right now, this past week I've heard of a Qatari Egyptian plan, and that was not true. There is no such thing. Then we heard about a Qatari plan with Steve Witkoff. No such thing exists. At the present time, there are negotiations or there are talks behind the scenes between the mediators and Hamas to find out what can be done in order to bring everybody to the table.
When we talk about a back channel, is that true to say that you are the back channel of the US to Hamas?
Yes, I am. I was the back channel, and all along the intention was for me to stay a private back channel. But one of your colleagues found it enticing to release my name, which was unfortunate for the process. But I whenever I am needed, I I respond because I want to see both an end to the war in Gaza, which is a savage war, and also for the release of the hostages. There is no need for those hostages to be away from their families. That's not right. At the same time, there are over 10,000 Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails, and most of those have not been sent to trial. So they've been held without trial, and those should be released. But because from my perspective, these are also hostages. Many of them have nothing to do with fighting the Israelis or anything. The Israeli soldiers picked them up and put them in jail, and they've been there rotting for some of them for years. Some of them, those in Gaza, they've been there since October 7th.
No. I think it's really important to distinguish between a hostage and a prisoner who is in jail. The hostages were kidnapped from their homes on October 7th, and the prisoner is a person who's in jail. He gets humanitarian aid, he gets food, he gets assistance, and everything he needs. While hostages in the tunnels in Gaza, we know what they're going through. So I think this is something that is very important to say, and we need to distinguish between hostages and prisoners.
No. I don't belittle the conditions that the hostages in Gaza are living in. I don't belittle that in any way, form, or shape. These are very difficult conditions. Whether they get food or some medication, being in a tunnel is not acceptable. All I'm saying is that there are many thousands of Palestinians in Israeli jails that you think are receiving, aid according to international standards, but they're not. Or they're being treated according to international standards. They're not. But
I'm just saying we can't call them hostages.
This is not the issue. The issue is we want people to be released either from jail or from being a hostage. And more important, the issue is to end that war in Gaza. If we end the war in Gaza, the hostages will be released. And I believe, and I've done it. I've done it for Edan Alexander. And, I was happy to do so. He was an American. I'm an American. I was happy to do so. I was happy that the president of the United States was happy about it. And I want this tragedy to end on both sides. That's my goal.
You know what, Dr. Bahbah, maybe we should start from the beginning. How did you get involved in the negotiations? How did you get in touch with Mr. Witkoff? And how did you manage to free or to help free Idan Alexander?
I have to tell you, it was all accidental from my perspective. I was told by Soha Arafat, the late Yasser Arafat's wife, widow, that someone from Hamas wanted to get in touch with me to pass on a message to the U.S. administration. And if it was okay for them to get in touch with me, I said yes. And they, they got in touch with me and they said, we have a proposal for Mr. Witkoff. And the proposal talked about an all-out deal whereby all the hostages would be released in return for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. And then I relayed that message to Witkoff. Then there was a back and forth talk. That was in early April. Then there was back and forth talk as to what would be the proper medium to do that, what would such a deal include, and so on. And then at one point in time, Steve Witkoff asked me to concentrate on having Edan Alexander released as a gesture of goodwill toward the United States. And that's how it started. And fortunately, we were able to convince Hamas that that releasing Edan Alexander would be a game changer, and that would help end the war in Gaza. And that's how it all started. I mean, I was literally on vacation at that time. I was traveling in Southeast Asia. When I was on the phone, talking with Witkoff on one hand, talking with Hamas on the other hand, and back and forth. And at the time, the Egyptians and the Qataris were not involved. Nobody was involved except Steve Witkoff and I. And he was telling me what to say to Hamas, and we went back and forth until such time that they said, "Okay, we're willing to release Edan Alexander." Now, when I told Steve of that message, He did not believe me. So I said, you know what? Why don't I will ask my Hamas contacts to go to the Qatari Prime Minister's office, and then they will call you together from the Qatari Prime Minister's office and let you know that they were willing to release Edan Alexander. And that's what happened.
Wow. And then there was this official release of the message by Hamas saying we will release Idan Alexander tomorrow. And then it really happened within hours.
It happened, but I have to tell you, it was very difficult because Israel did not make it easy for the release of Idan Alexander. They were supposed to stop the bombing while he was being released, you know? And it was very difficult. There was a point in time when I was on the phone. I believe it was Thailand at the time or Tokyo. I'm not sure. I was on the phone, and we were not sure how he was going to be released. Then we got in touch with I did not get in touch. Steve, I believe, got in touch with the International Red Cross. And then a means was arranged for his release to U.S. custody. He was released to Steve Witkoff.
And I think it's also, it's pretty interesting that Steve Witkoff got a phone call from you and he had a great instinct to trust in you.
It was not a question of trust. I mean, let's be clear. It was a question of, let's see what this guy can do, whether he's serious or not. There was one point in time during the back and forth when he would say, don't get in touch with them. If you do, I will find out through our intelligence services. So I backed off. I stopped getting in touch with them.
So he tested you.
Huh?
He tested you.
Apparently,
it was important for him to make sure that the person he's talking to is reliable and that you know.
I mean, certainly I went through many tests with Steve Witkoff. He's a great, great individual. He's a great humanitarian. And I admire him and respect him deeply. It's a very interesting dynamic dealing. I mean, on one hand, I'm dealing with a real estate guru, but on the other hand, Steve and I were talking one day, and he said, both you and I don't really have the expertise or the training to have to do what we are doing right now, but it seems like it's working. We're doing it. And he did tell me that both you and I, probably our reward will be in heaven, and not to really expect a medal on our chests, on our. So, I did it for a good cause. He did it for a good cause. He wanted to see the end of the war in Gaza, which would provide for the release of the hostages. I wanted to see the end of the war in Gaza and to get the hostages out. And it just worked out. I mean, and the funny thing is, I met Witkoff maybe in passing for less than 5 minutes. And that was December of last year. I met him at an airport in the UAE when he was getting off his plane. And that was it. Other than that, we've spoken on the phone, but we have not seen each other. Perhaps this coming week I might be seeing him. So,
yeah. Tell me about this last round of negotiations. Different people say different things about. Were we close to a deal? Was Hamas the one stopping it? Hamas is blaming Israel for leaving and jeopardizing the chances for a hostage ceasefire deal.
I will tell you what was communicated to me the day that Hamas gave its response, which was about 3 weeks on a Thursday. Both the mediators, the Egyptians and the Qataris, said that they felt that the Hamas response to the Israeli proposal with regard to the maps was positive. Hamas was not really rigid in terms of what it was willing to do. It was willing to negotiate, And the same thing between the exchange of prisoners and hostages. I mean, there was the issue of numbers, but I mean, there was the U.S. Israeli offer of 125 lifetime sentenced Palestinian prisoners in return for 10 Israeli living hostages. And, there was give and take also on that. Hamas demanded 200. And I believe that Israel would have agreed to a larger number, but not coming to 200. So there was the opportunity to come to a deal. And honestly, I don't know why we did not pursue that, because if we did, we would have had a deal about 2.5 weeks ago. Even though what I was told by the mediators, that the Israeli delegation, when they saw what was presented to them, said that they were cautiously positive, And so I don't know what happens in Israeli behind the scenes politics, but clearly it was not something that was at the time acceptable to Israel, which is okay. If it was not acceptable, tell us what is acceptable, so that we can get to a point where we can get both sides to agree. I think right now, after 3 weeks of cessation of any of these negotiations, I'm hoping that the negotiations would go back. Now there is talk that Israel is only interested in a comprehensive deal. I'm not sure about that. I have not seen any confirmation in that regard. But at the same time, I believe that the partial deal, it was and is achievable. But my concern for the people in Gaza is paramount, and I would do it on a personal basis. And I believe that in order to have peace in Gaza, or to have the end of the war at the very least, we need to also release the hostages. So there is no need for hostages to be there in Gaza. There is no need for prisoners to be in Israeli prison. There is no need for that war. Everything could come to an end if there is an intent to do so. And this is where we are right now. I know.
Yeah, I think it's important to emphasize what really happened 3 weeks ago, because I think also the Israeli public wants to hear from someone who was there in the rooms in Qatar. So please explain, have you and the negotiators understood that there is a deal that can be made, and what happened next?
The mediators, Qatar and Egypt, were the ones who told me that Hamas's response was workable, and with it, a deal can be reached. Now,
and that Hamas is willing to be flexible?
They told me that Hamas was willing to be flexible. Now, the day before, the Hamas had presented the Egyptians and the Qataris with certain maps and numbers, and the Qataris and the Egyptians said, no, we're not going to take them to anyone. Revise those and we'll come back tomorrow. So that was on a Wednesday. Then on a Tuesday. And then Hamas worked on the revisions all of Wednesday and did not finish. The mediators did not leave the meetings with Hamas till 5 a.m. on that Thursday. So the negotiations went on for an extended period of hours. And then when the mediators felt that it was something that they could work on, then they said, okay, we can take this and we can work on it. We can show it to the Israelis, and hopefully we will reach an agreement. So, but somebody cut off that line of negotiations, and here we are, with
somebody
3
is
weeks.
Israel?
I'm presuming that the decision at the end of the day was an Israeli decision, because there were negotiations between the Israelis and Hamas.
But then Israel left Qatar, and that
A day later, Israel left Qatar. Yes,
and then
we've been nothing in the meantime. Things were frozen. Now, I spoke with my Egyptian colleagues earlier today, and they indicated that they are in discussions behind the scenes with Hamas, along with the Qataris, to find a way to get people back to the negotiating table. Hopefully that we've reached the end of being stubborn and back to the negotiating table.
So you think both sides are willing at this point
I don't know
Maybe.
about the Israeli side.
Okay, so what do you hear from Hamas right now?
Well, you have to understand that my relationship with Hamas is touch and go. I've angered them many times where they issued statements against me, and they had their spokespeople, attempt to mop the floor with me. There were times the last thing was 2 or 3 days ago, I received the message that we need to keep the communications with you, we respect what we are doing, and so on and so forth. I've attempted to call them, and they have not picked up the phone. So,
But at this point, if you're trying to read the map, what do you think Hamas is thinking at this point?
I think, it's easy to say, let's go for a comprehensive agreement. But the comprehensive agreement, is going to deal with issues that are very difficult, such as what happens to Hamas, what happens to its weapons, whether their military leaders would leave Gaza or not, and so on. So these are tough issues. These are tough issues to negotiate when the fighting is going on in Gaza and people are still hungry. Despite the aid coming in, people are still hungry in Gaza. They don't have enough. So here, from my perspective, it is better to deal with what we had on the table about 3 weeks ago to complete a partial deal and then have 60 days or a longer period of time, if needed, to negotiate a final settlement for the situation in Gaza, a complete end to the war, Israeli withdrawal, the return of all the hostages, return of Palestinian prisoners, and hopefully the beginning of reconstruction of Gaza.
So you're saying it will be harder to get a complete deal, and it will be easier to start with a partial deal that Israel is offered, and that Hamas might be willing to go for.
Well, Israel is offered and then pulled out from. So right now we have to get everyone to the table. They have to become grown-ups. They have to act in a responsible manner. For the sake of their own people, each side, come back to the negotiating table. And it is much easier to negotiate, like I said, a partial deal than it is to negotiate a comprehensive deal. Let's do a partial deal.
But do you think that
whereby
Hamas really wants a complete deal?
they've offered the first communications with me was a return of all the hostages for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. That was their offer. So, it's not like they did not put that
Do you
on.
believe that they will release all of the hostages?
Yes, if there is a complete cessation of hostilities and Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, I believe so, yes.
But then they will have to give up their arms. Will they do
Well,
that?
this is the thing. The issue of the permanent resolution, which would entail discussing potentially what would happen to the arms, Hamas's arms, their military people, and so on and so forth, that's a tough issue. I'm not delusional to think that it's an easy issue. It's a tough issue. So let's leave that to the second part of the negotiations, and it can all be dealt with. There are mechanisms in which maybe Arab troops would go in. Hamas would give its arms to those troops. And then some of the Hamas leaders would leave Gaza, to exile or whatever, to another Arab country. Uh, so, um, I mean, I'm just offering here what I think is possible at the present time, and what should be presented at the table during the final portion of the negotiations to completely end the war and have Israel withdraw from Gaza. Then that would entail, obviously, the release of the Israeli hostages.
I know that for you, hearing the reports from Gaza is very tough. I know that you also have a lot of friends in Gaza that you're in touch with. You also have friends in Israel, and family in Israel. Tell me, how are you coping with that?
It's really very difficult for me. I have within a very short period, I have 32,000 people, mostly from Gaza, following me on my Facebook. I see their reports. Some of them call me. I've got over 1,000 messages that I have not even gotten to. Not that I don't want to, but a lot of times there's nothing I could do. But people are suffering. I mean, I've had people tell me, listen, we have not had anything to eat for 3 days. The only thing that we'd had was a little bit of lentil soup, you know, to sustain us. Everything that we have that's edible, we give it to the children because the children need it more than the adults. People, when they go to try and get aid, they get shot at. Sometimes I hear from people saying, well, my husband went out to get the aid, or my brother went out to get the aid, and we don't know whether they'll come back or not. Or we waited all night to find out whether they would come back or not. This is really heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking in this day and age, in the 21st century, that we see starvation in a place like Gaza. It's hard. I mean, it shouldn't be anywhere. It's just, we have to be dignified. If we want others to respect us and to honor our values, to honor who we are, we also have to show that kindness toward others. And so it's very difficult for me to see the deprivation in Gaza, to see the destruction in Gaza. I mean, people tell me, well, we've moved. This is the 4th time that we have moved, or the 3rd time. We're in a tent that does not have shielding of any source, of any kind. It's very hot in the summer. It's extremely cold and wet during the winter when it rains. So it's a very heartbreaking situation. And I know that the Israeli public does not want to see that kind of agony among people. It's just not befit human beings. And so my appeal is, let's end it quickly, for the sake of everybody involved, because it's doable. It can be resolved.
Okay, so just like on one short sentence, where is it all standing now? Where are we heading now?
Well, I see clearly Steve Witkoff is very interested in ending this war, getting the
And
hostages
President Trump
home.
as well.
There's no question. The president is very committed to that. He's very committed not to see.
It says that your recording is stopped. Can you hear me?
At this point, our conversation is interrupted. Bishara Bahbah gets a phone call. It was a phone call from Hamas. So from now on, in the next couple of minutes, take into consideration that he just spoke to Hamas people.
Okay, we got hung up. So first of all, you heard Prime Minister Netanyahu today talking about the possible taking control of Gaza by the IDF and Israel. If you'd like to comment on that.
I mean, does Israel want more war, or does it want to put an end to that war? I think, I'm not here to tell the Israelis what to do, but clearly I am a person who wants to end that war, and escalating that war is not going to be helpful to reaching any agreement.
Okay.
It's not.
And then maybe last question, where are things standing right now? Where you think that things are heading towards?
Well, all I know is that the President Trump is very committed to seeing an end to this war. President Trump is committed to getting the hostages released, and President Trump is committed to end the situation of starvation in Gaza. These are positive signs. Clearly, Steve Witkoff is very committed to those principles as well, or to those goals. And right now is the time either to pick up where we left off about 3 weeks ago, or to go for a comprehensive deal. But when we negotiate for a comprehensive deal, I think it would make a lot of sense not to be killing people, not to be starving people, So essentially, call it a temporary ceasefire while that permanent solution is resolved. I think that would be the ideal situation.
And is Hamas willing to go for a deal at this point after Israel left the negotiations today after 3 weeks or almost 3 weeks? Are they willing to go for a hostage deal? Ceasefire hostage deal?
Yes, I was just told that Hamas is prepared to either go with a partial deal or a comprehensive deal. Because they feel that the time spent on a partial deal is going to be equivalent to the time spent on a comprehensive deal. Now, I am not in a position to tell them what to do, but if I can be of assistance, I'm happy to do so. I believe that this is where the mediators as well stand. They are there to assist to assist in ending this war. But I honestly, this is the first day where I see that there is a ray of hope. This is the first time in several weeks that I'm more hopeful that we are about to resume negotiations. When those negotiations will resume, I do not know. But today I'm receiving signs that there is an interest in the resumption of those negotiations.
So we're also very happy to hear that. Dr. Bishara Bahbah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining the Kraus Report. If you like this episode, click subscribe and join us.